guys, welcome back to the channel. My name's Steven, this is Northwest Small Batch Brewing. And today, if you watch one of my other videos, you may notice that I just finished a video on cider. I promise I'll put a link, to that. But today's video is about hops. And I wanted to do a video about hops because I feel like there's this, if you do a search for it or you look for people doing videos on it, what you usually find is way too much information, way too much on chemicals and all this stuff. It's like, I want to put a video out there that says, here's what you need to know for home brewing. Don't make it too difficult. Don't make it, unattainable or unapproachable. And so hopefully that's what I'm going to do. It'll be a short video because I don't have a whole lot, but I want to cover just the basics. This is going to sound crazy for me to say this, but I do have a video that is either out or coming out on grain, and I have found that that side of it, grain, is far more important in the brewing process than the hops are. There's not that much you need to do with hops except put them in at the right time. So stay tuned for the intro, and I'll be back with a little bit more info. All right, hops. Let's talk hops. There's no hops in this, it's apple cider. But generally speaking, right, you're going to get your hops in most brewers who order them online and go to the brew shop, get them either whole cone, which means it's the whole cone, of the hop, and then dried, or you get it in pellet form, which means that they sort of mash it up and sort of put it into a tiny little rabbit pellet shape. I myself almost always try to get the pellets. They're smaller, they take up less room. The quality, in my opinion, is the same. I just don't see a benefit to getting the whole cone. There's a third method, and that is you can get them fresh. Like if you grow your own or somebody's growing them. There's a method called wet hopping that you can use fresh hops. The problem is it takes like 5 times as many fresh hops as it does dry hops for your beer. So that's a lot, that's a lot. So it's definitely easier to work with dried hops, whether it's the cone or the pellet. You will almost always find that most recipes online are using hop pellets. It's just that's the standard right now. It's easier to ship them. It's easier to package them. And that's what's used. All right. So what are hops used for? Well, they're used for really 2 things, right? They're used for bittering, and they're used for flavoring or finishing, like the odor. It's the nose, of your beer. So bittering, because believe it or not, your grain can end up being a little bit too sweet. Not sweet like a sugar sweet. I don't think you're going to get it like that, but it's just sweeter than you want. You want for a beer to be refreshing and drinkable and not feel like, ugh, I've had enough. You don't want to overpower it in one direction or another. So the hops help to alter that and give some bitterness. The bittering hops are a specific kind. You just don't want to throw any hop in. There are specific hops that are usually designated as bittering hops, and you usually put them in your your mash for the entire hour. Sorry, your boil for the entire hour. And then you have finishing hops. Finishing hops are usually put in at the very end. You can. I've seen editions like at 30 minutes that'd be more of a bittering, but a little less. Finishing hops are usually the last 15, 10, or 5 minutes. And they add aroma, although aroma evaporates very quickly off of it, so sometimes it's hard to catch that. But it adds basically flavor and aroma to your beer. Now, They both have, so inside the hop is like it's basically an acid or this resin, right? If you open a hop up, if you happen to have like a whole cone, you'll see, it's almost like pollen. So bittering hops use alpha acid, and those particular hops that are grown have a very high level of alpha acid. That's your bittering. So when you're looking to buy hops, if you're looking at the recipe, it's just a good idea to get used to looking at what it'll say right on the package. When you're buying it, it'll tell you, X hops, or let's say Cascade hops are AA, and then it'll have a number after that AA, and that's alpha acid. So that can, if you start, keeping an eye on that, you can become attuned to, okay, this is more bitter or less bitter than this one, and it's just a scale that you can use. It could be helpful. Finishing hops, again, are still full of alpha acids. They're still going to have an AA number on them. There is another kind of acid in the hop that we really just don't talk about. And so I don't want to confuse anything, but there's alpha and there's beta, right? Alpha acid, beta acid. The beta acid does contribute somewhat to the bittering, but not nearly to the extent of the alpha acid. So you really don't need to focus on that. It's why they don't put the beta acid numbers like on the package, because as a brewer, we're really not looking at that side of it. If you dry hop, that will use more of the beta acid. Dry hopping uses more of that as opposed to just putting it in with a boil. The alpha acid. So alpha acid, the bittering in a beer, uses the IBU table. IBU, what is that? International Bittering Unit. So if you're making a beer, you can look and it'll usually say on the recipe what IBU it is. And you can kind of get an idea of how bitter something is by how high the IBU is. And that also correlates to, okay, what's the alpha acid, the AA number that's on that package of hops that you have? That's what gives you a specific IBU number to tell you how bitter it will be. Let's talk about antiseptic value. This is going to be controversial, and at some point I expect that people are going to comment, and there's just no, I'm not going to argue it, but I've seen a lot of information and a lot of videos, not from brewers, but from labs that have gone into commercial breweries and done swab tests. What they were looking for is to see, if infections exist in commercial beer and where they might be coming from, but also there is this rumor, used to be true, somewhat true, thing that says that hops have an antiseptic quality, meaning that hops can be used to ensure your beer doesn't get infected because bugs and mold and stuff don't like hops. I will go on the record and say I believe that is partially true. I think it used to be more true, but here's the problem. Like any kind of pathogen or mold or whatever, it learns and it adapts. And so the labs that did the swabs determined that a lot of the things that we thought were, didn't like to be around hops and the hops would keep it out, have adapted to hops. Some of them actually want to be in the hops where they didn't used to. Some of them don't care if there's hops in the beer. So you cannot any longer depend on hops having this antiseptic value that's going to keep your beer from getting an infection. I've heard it. I've heard people say it in their brewing videos. Oh, it's okay. The hops will make it okay. Do some research, because what I've been finding is that over time, these different pathogens and bugs have learned how to adapt, and they don't even care anymore, if there's hops or not hops in the beer. In fact, there are some things that don't care if there's alcohol, because that's another. It's not part of this video, but it's another test they did where people would say, well, if there's 5% alcohol or whatever in my beer, then it's clean. There can't be anything living in there. They found out, this lab found out by doing swabs that yes, indeed, there are some things that will grow in alcohol. So it's not a guarantee, I guess, is all I'm saying. It's no excuse to not make sure you're being as clean as sanitary as possible and using your sanitizer and whatnot. All right. I'm going to get off of that. I just brought it up because they used to be more of that antiseptic reason for using hops, but they're really not so much anymore. This is an interesting one and will explain something for a lot of people. I expect to see a light bulb go off on some people's faces or, in their head when they hear this. Hops don't like sunlight. When I say hops, I mean like the alpha acid, the acids that are inside, the pollen-y stuff, doesn't like direct sunlight. Doesn't like it. Causes it to go bad. So if you've ever heard beer going skunky or having like a wet cardboard or wet paper taste because sunlight has hit the bottle, guess what? It's not your beer, it's not the grain, it's the hops. It's the hops that are in the beer that don't like the sunlight. So you can imagine the more hops you have, the higher opportunity to have a skunky beer. Well, that's why we use these brown bottles. They help keep out the ultraviolet light. But if you are making like an IPA and you're dry hopping, there's a lot of hops in there, right? So there's a much bigger opportunity for that beer to go bad more quickly. And you want to try to keep it away from oxygen and light as much as possible. I don't brew those kind of beers myself. Excuse me. This is very effervescent apple cider. I don't brew those kind of beers because they're just not my thing. Don't enjoy them. But for those people who do, it kind of explains why they can go bad so quickly. If you've ever seen stuff about IPAs, you know that people are always talking about how you have to drink them fast because as soon as you open them, they go bad fast. So I'm almost done here. Let's talk about categories of hops. There are three main categories depending on region, right? There are noble hops, American hops, and English hops. So noble and English are sort of similar. Noble hops are from Germany, and they usually have low alpha acid levels, and they're mainly used for lagers and pilsners, which makes sense because if they have a low alpha acid number, they're not going to be very bitter, and you don't want something really bitter for a lager or, pilsner maybe a little bit more. But yeah, there's noble hops. Some examples are Saz. Those are noble hops. Tettnanger. I may not be pronouncing it right. I have never used that particular hop, but that's also a noble hop. And let's skip to English hops because they're very similar. English hops, obviously from Great Britain, are also low in alpha acid, so they're also not very bitter. They're very subtle. They're very delicate. They're very mild. They have sort of earthy, molassesy spice, herb spice, maybe wood flavor to them. Those most famous probably are Fuggle. Hopefully I'm saying that right. I'm afraid to say it any different way, but that's a good example of an English hop. And then you have American hops. So if you're looking for something with more bittering, American hops, because they're much higher in alpha acid. They're very bold. They're very bright. They tend to be very aromatic, like citrusy. You can get good pine sort of flavors and smells from them. Cascade are a common one. Centennial. I buy a lot of hops from a company called Yakima Hops up in Washington. So I shouldn't. Well, I don't get anything for mentioning names anyway. Anyway, so those are the three main. I'm not saying that nobody else makes hops. It's just those are the three big categories, if you're thinking about it. So if you're ever looking like you're trying to make your own recipe and you're like, okay, I'm going to finally do my own recipe. What kind of hops should I get for this? It helps at least to narrow down the category and go, okay, well, I need this to be more bitter, so maybe you're going to work for an American hop, or maybe I want this to be more earthy, and you're going to look for more like of a noble hop, Another type of tip if you're making your own recipe and you're trying to decide on what hops to use. There is an easy search. I decided not to post it here because you can easily just Google this. Just type in hop variety or comparison variety, hop comparison chart, and you will find a chart that will give you all the hops you can think of, where they're from, and it'll give you flavor and smell and components. So if you're deciding on what hop do you want for your beer, what's going to work with it. So if you're making something, you know, bright and citrusy, you get a hop that's sort of complements that. So don't be afraid to look those comparison parts up. All right, last thing I have is storage. I think I've already mentioned this on other videos, but because it is a hop video, listen, here's what I do. When I'm done using the hops that I'm going to use for that particular beer that I'm making, I put what's left in a food saver bag. And then I put it in my food saver machine and I suck all the air out. So it basically is completely sealed. And then I throw that into the freezer. If you don't have a food saver, I recommend it. I've said this on one of my first videos I ever made. I mean, you can use it for a lot more than just hops, obviously. For example, I had half an onion left one day, and I put it in the food saver. It was already peeled. I just had it sliced in half, sucked all the air out, threw it in the refrigerator. And months later, I realized, oh yeah, I still have that onion. And I looked, and it was still there, perfectly sealed, and not a touch of mold on it. Just amazing. So it really makes a huge difference with preserving stuff. It's worth it, I think. But if you don't have one, the least you can do is put it in a small bag as possible and stick it in the freezer. I mean, it can last for years in the freezer. So it's a nice way, because you can only buy hops in certain amounts. If you're going to have to buy like 2 ounces of a particular hop, you only need an ounce. Save that other ounce, stick it in the freezer, and then the next time you make some beer, if you're using that particular hop, you've already got some. So that's what I've got for now. Make sure you hit the like, subscribe button. It helps my channel out, gets people to find me more easily. Other than that, hey, go have some fun, smell some hops, put some hops in your beer, have a cider, and enjoy the fall that's coming. And happy brewing.